Well, the mainstream media in hysterics once again, this time over the president's mental health. Watch.
He keeps getting worse and mentally keeps getting worse. This is a man in decline.
There's the unwritten rule in the psychiatric community that nobody diagnoses from afar.
He has literally devolved to the point where there is concern about his health.
He's not well. He's not of sound mind. And Donald, if you're watching, we're from Queens. I'll meet you in the schoolyard, brother.
Clayton's favorite, Donnie Deutsch.
But are they finally taking things too far?
Here to weigh in is the former Miami-Dade County Circuit Court Judge, Judge Alex Ferrer. Judge, thank you very much for being here this morning. So, what do you make of all this back and forth?
Well, I mean, it's, of course, mental illness is a touchy subject. We've all known people who couldn't take criticism or didn't take criticism well, and then obviously President Trump believes that criticism is unwarranted and malicious. At least. But we wouldn't call the people that we've worked with who would slam you back if you criticized them mentally ill. That's not the label that we would use. Now, of course, when you're dealing with the President of the United States, the power is so huge that if a journalist really believes that there's evidence of mental illness, suppose they have to take some action. The problem is that the media, number one, has no legitimate basis to claim he's mentally ill other than the fact that they feel that his responses are either crass or inappropriate for the office of the president.
So are there any rules
secondly,
then? Go ahead, finish.
No, not really. I mean, we can see the media does whatever it wants. It's done so since before President Trump was elected, which leads to my second point, which is the media really doesn't have any credibility when it comes to this. I mean, you think back, before he was president, they were basically scheming to keep him from being president, so much so that they had to apologize for their news coverage after he was elected. After he was elected, then there were all these suggestions that electors didn't have to vote that way, that they could vote their conscience to keep him from actually getting legitimately elected by the Electoral College. And then now that he's been elected, it's been every day 24/7 an attempt to undermine anything he does with negative coverage around the clock. I think even the most well-balanced individual would have a difficult time not going after such an onslaught on almost every media outlet. And if you want to claim that President Trump is mentally ill because he responds in that fashion, and I certainly don't agree with a lot of his responses, then what do you say about the journalists who basically are foaming at the mouth at every opportunity to take a shot at him and driving themselves insane about anything he does?
Yeah, and calling themselves independent and unbiased in the process.
And there's clearly so much evidence to the contrary. I mean, it seems like every other day we're finding out evidence that this is anything but clear and fair and unbiased coverage.
Judge, I want to get your take on the travel ban, obviously from the court perspective. Finally, the travel ban in place. Court challenges begin, of course, and now there's these additional challenges up against what the Supreme Court has laid down while they take this up in the next into the fall. What do you make of this? Do those challenges hold any water at all?
Well, I think some of them will, and I also think that Justice Thomas predicted as much. He said if the language that we're using when we're saying this was a win, of course, for President Trump because his travel ban was basically left in place with the exception of any individuals who had a quote-unquote bona fide relationship with individuals or entities in the U.S. And as far as individuals are concerned, they said a bona fide relationship was a close familial relationship. Well, those terms leave a lot to interpretation, so the Trump administration came in and said, okay, we'll think that parents and children and siblings, et cetera, are close familial relationships, but we don't think grandparents and grandchildren are. That's going to be a legitimate challenge. I mean, the Supreme Court, in its opinion, said mother-in-laws are close familial relationships. How can you say a mother-in-law is and a grandparent is not? So there are going to be some legitimate challenges, but there are also going to be all those out there who simply want to undermine anything that President Trump does, and they will take the opportunity to challenge him in front of courts that are enemies, basically.
True. Judge, good to have you here. Have a great holiday.
Thanks, Judge.
Appreciate it.